as the thunder cracked across the fractured skies of the realm of lands. The Red Queen stood atop her obsidian throne and held aloft a jagged long black scepter. Her eyes burned with crimson fire as she began her incantation, summoning dark magic that twisted and rippled the fabric of the realm. Before her, the shattered remnants of the wicked witches of the east and west lay in smoldering ashes. The Red Queen's voice rose, the words of the ancient spell echoing through the blood-red mist that enveloped the castle's throne room. "By the power of the Rift Keeper, I summon thee back from the abyss," she screamed. The room shook violently as two dark portals opened on either side of the throne. Shadows coalesced, forming into the sinister figures of the wicked witches. Their laughter was bone-chilling as they returned, renewed and more powerful than ever. "Sisters," the Red Queen hissed, "your land awaits its destruction." But she wasn't done. With a flick of her wrist, she directed the witches to a third portal, their combined power twisting the Rift Keeper's dark energy into a whirlpool of shadows. Out of the void stepped Captain Hook, his once faded form restored to life. His metal hook gleamed, and his eyes burned with vengeance. "I live again," he growled, his grin razor-sharp. "And this time, Pan will die." The alliance of darkness was complete. The Red Queen, the wicked witches, and Hook prepared to spread their tyranny across this patchwork realm. The Rift Keeper's rise to power was shrouded in shadow. No one in Oz, Neverland, or Wonderland anticipated the mysterious figure's sinister plans until it was all too late. With the help of the resurrected wicked witches, Captain Hook, and the Red Queen, the Rift Keeper unleashed a campaign of terror across the three realms. The villains used dark magic, cunning traps, and overwhelming force to capture the champions of these lands, ensuring there would be no resistance to their reign. Princess Ozma had been a beacon of hope for the people of Oz. Her magic maintained the harmony of the land, and her wisdom kept the realm united. But the resurrection of the wicked witches of the east and west had changed everything. Under the cover of a magical storm conjured by the witches, an army of flying monkeys descended upon the Emerald City. Their attacks were relentless, tearing through the city's defenses and sowing chaos. The Tin Man and Scarecrow fought valiantly alongside Princess Ozma, rallying the citizens to defend their home. The Wicked Witch of the West, riding her broomstick, unleashed a torrent of dark magic that overwhelmed the defenders. As the Tin Man charged toward her, she cast a spell that rusted his joints, freezing him in place. The Scarecrow was engulfed in a whirlwind of cursed fire, reducing him to a smoldering heap. Ozma herself tried to fight back, using her powerful magic to shield the citizens and counter the witches' spells. But the Wicked Witch of the East struck from the shadows, trapping Ozma in chains forged from enchanted silver. These chains drained her magic, leaving her powerless. The witches laughed as they dragged her into a dark portal created by the Rift Keeper, leaving the Emerald City in ruins. The Red Queen's betrayal was swift and devastating. She had been plotting her rise to power for years, her mind corrupted by the Rift Keeper's whispers. With the Keeper's help, she seized control of Wonderland's chaotic magic, twisting it to her will. The King and Queen of Hearts, unaware of the Red Queen's dark ambitions, were caught off guard. During what they believed to be a royal feast, the Red Queen unleashed her enchanted playing cards, transforming them into deadly soldiers. The White Rabbit, the royal messenger, tried to warn the King and Queen, but he was captured by the Bandersnatch before he could escape. The Red Queen's Jabberwock rampaged through the castle, destroying everything in its path. The King and Queen of Hearts fought bravely, using their combined magic to hold off the Red Queen's forces. However, the Red Queen unleashed the Jub-Jub bird, which blinded them with its hypnotic gaze. With their defenses shattered, the Red Queen imprisoned them in a dungeon, their magic siphoned to strengthen her grip on Wonderland. The White Rabbit was dragged into a magical cage, barely clinging to consciousness. His last sight before the darkness claimed him was the twisted grin of the Cheshire Cat, who disappeared into the shadows, waiting for his chance to act. Captain Hook's resurrection was a nightmare for Neverland. Brought back to life by the wicked witches, Hook was stronger and more ruthless than ever, his heart filled with vengeance. With the Jolly Roger restored and powered by dark magic, Hook led an aerial assault on Neverland. The Lost Boys, led by Peter Pan, tried to fight back, using their agility and quick thinking to outmaneuver Hook's pirates. Tinkerbell used her pixie dust to empower the Lost Boys, giving them an edge in the battle. But the witches' magic was too powerful. They conjured a storm that grounded the flying children and scattered their forces. Hook himself faced Peter Pan in a duel aboard the Jolly Roger. Though Peter fought valiantly, Hook's newfound strength gave him the upper hand. "Looks like your luck has run out, Pan," Hook sneered, disarming Peter with a brutal slash of his enchanted sword. Tinkerbell tried to intervene, but the wicked witches cast a binding spell that trapped her in a magical cage. The lost boys were captured one by one, their cries of defiance echoing across the skies. Peter Pan was shackled in enchanted chains that suppressed his ability to fly and drained his strength. Hook laughed as he threw Peter into the ship's brig, taunting him with promises of eternal imprisonment. Once captured, the champions of the three realms were transported to the Rift Keeper's prisons, shadowy dimensions where time and space bent to the Keeper's will. Ozma was imprisoned in a crystal cage, her magic constantly drained to fuel the witch's dark reign over Oz. The cage floated in a void, unreachable by ordinary means. The King and Queen of Hearts were locked in a labyrinthine dungeon filled with traps and illusions, designed to break their spirits and keep them disoriented. Peter Pan was confined in the depths of the Jolly Roger, an enchanted cell where his powers were nullified, and the walls whispered taunts that eroded his hope. The prisons were fortified by the Rift Keeper's magic, ensuring that even the strongest of heroes could not escape unaided. The villains, now united under the Rift Keeper's influence, reveled in their victories, confident that their reign would remain unchallenged. What they did not anticipate, however, was the resilience of those they had underestimated. Deep within the Red Queen's dungeons, three weakened figures lay in separate cells: Glinda the Good Witch, Tinkerbell, and the White Rabbit. Their once vibrant magic had been drained, leaving them mere shadows of their former selves. A pair of glowing eyes and a wide, toothy grin appeared in the shadows outside their cells. "I'd say you three have overstayed your welcome," purred the Cheshire Cat. With a flick of his tail, he vanished and reappeared inside the White Rabbit's cell, unlocking it with a claw. "Hurry," the cat urged. "You must find your champions. The realm depends on it." The White Rabbit stumbled out, clutching his chest as he tried to gather strength. The Cheshire Cat wasted no time, slipping into Glinda's cell next. The witch raised her weary eyes. "Why help us, Cheshire?" "Because chaos is only fun when it's evenly matched," he replied with a sly grin. After freeing Tinkerbell, the group gathered at the dungeon's edge. But alarms began to blare, and the echo of monstrous roars filled the halls. "The Jabberwock," Glinda whispered. "We have no time," the Cheshire Cat said, vanishing again. His voice lingered as they fled. "Find your heroes, and save us all." The White Rabbit, Glinda, and Tinkerbell raced through the forest, their path illuminated by pale moonlight. Behind them, the thundering footsteps of the Bandersnatch and the screeches of the Jubjub bird drew closer. "I can't keep running," the White Rabbit panted, his small legs trembling. "You must," Glinda urged. "We can't let them catch us." Tinkerbell, though weak, flitted between them, scattering faint trails of pixie dust to obscure their pursuers. The Bandersnatch lunged, its massive jaws snapping mere inches from Glinda's heels. "This way," the White Rabbit cried, veering left toward a hollow log. The trio dived inside, holding their breath as the creatures sniffed and growled outside. When the coast was clear, Glinda whispered, "We need to split up. It's the only way to find help faster." The White Rabbit nodded reluctantly. "I'll find Alice," he said. "I'll go for Dorothy," Glinda added. Tinkerbell hovered weakly. "And I'll get Wendy. If we don't make it." "We will," Glinda said firmly. "Go, now." The three departed in different directions, each with one goal: to bring their chosen hero back to the realm. Dorothy Gale was sound asleep in her Kansas farmhouse when a strange gust of wind swirled around her bedroom. She stirred as a soft voice called her name. "Dorothy, we need you." Her eyes fluttered open to see Glinda, her shimmering pink gown now dulled and tattered. "Glinda," Dorothy gasped, sitting up. "What's going on?" "There's no time to explain," Glinda said, swaying on her feet. "Oz is in ruins. We need you." Dorothy jumped out of bed. "I'll come. But how do we get there?" Glinda raised her trembling hands. With the last of her strength, she conjured a small cyclone that enveloped them both. Dorothy clutched her friend as they were swept into the vortex, disappearing into the magical realm. Alice Little was dozing in her chair, a book resting on her lap. She awoke with a start as the sound of frantic digging echoed outside her window. Moments later, the white rabbit burst through the ground, his fur matted and his eyes wide with urgency. "Alice!" he cried, bounding into the room through the cat flap. "It's not too late. Wonderland needs you." Alice blinked, still half asleep. "White Rabbit, what on earth?" "No time," he said, grabbing her hand with his trembling paw. "Follow me." With that, he led her outside and toward a familiar rabbit hole. Without hesitation, Alice jumped in, her heart racing as she plunged back into Wonderland. Tinkerbell struggled to fly through the open window of a London townhouse, her light dimming with every beat of her wings. She collapsed onto the bed, only to find it empty. "Wendy," she whispered. The door creaked open, and a grown Wendy darling entered the room. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Tinkerbell," she breathed. The fairy looked up, her voice barely audible. "Wendy, Peter needs you." Wendy's heart clenched. Without another word, she gently scooped up Tinkerbell. "We'll go together," Wendy said, determination flashing in her eyes. With a sprinkle of pixie dust, they took flight, heading for the second star to the right and straight on till morning. The starry sky over Neverland shimmered with faint traces of magic as Dorothy, Alice, and Wendy found themselves standing in a forest clearing. They each looked at one another, confusion giving way to realization. "Dorothy Gale," Wendy said, extending a hand. "From Oz, I presume." Dorothy nodded, shaking Wendy's hand. "And you're Wendy, darling. Tinkerbell wouldn't stop talking about you on the way here." Alice stepped forward, brushing dust off her dress. "I assume you both were summoned too. Wonderland is in chaos, and the White Rabbit said only I could help." A rustling in the trees drew their attention. The Jabberwock stepped into view, its massive wings casting a shadow over the clearing. Its glowing red eyes locked onto the trio, flanked by a dozen hypnotized playing cards wielding spears. Dorothy raised her fists. "We've got trouble." The Jabberwock roared, and the battle began. The Jabberwock lunged at Wendy, its claws raking across the ground. She rolled out of the way, grabbing a thick branch to defend herself. Dorothy tried to summon a cyclone, but her magic faltered. Alice picked up a fallen spear from one of the enchanted playing cards and thrust it toward the creature, her determination fierce. Suddenly, a burst of light erupted from above. Glinda and Tinkerbell descended, their combined magic forming a protective shield around the heroines. "Tinkerbell, Glinda!" Wendy cried out. "We'll hold them off." Glinda shouted, her voice strained. "You three must fight." The Good Witch and the Fairy pooled their remaining strength, creating a surge of magic that sent the Jabberwock stumbling back. Their spell enveloped Dorothy, Alice, and Wendy, imbuing them with new abilities. Glinda collapsed to her knees. Tinkerbell fell beside her, their magic depleted. They drifted into a deep sleep as the heroines stood, their powers awakened. Dorothy's hands glowed faintly as a silver staff materialized, its head shaped like a miniature tornado. She could now summon gusts of wind to knock enemies off their feet. Alice examined her new weapon, a crystalline dagger infused with Wonderland's chaotic magic. But her true gift lay in her ability to mimic the powers of those she touched, a skill she discovered when she brushed against Dorothy and felt a fleeting connection to cyclone magic. Wendy gripped a shimmering rapier that glowed with the light of pixie dust. She felt a surge of agility and strength, able to leap great distances and strike with precision. "We'll protect you," Dorothy said, stepping in front of Glinda and Tinkerbell. Together, the heroines fought back the Jabberwock, their newfound abilities driving it away. The hypnotized playing cards retreated into the shadows, and the forest fell silent once more. The trio pressed on, carrying Glinda and Tinkerbell with them until they stumbled upon a hidden cave. Inside, they found two figures, Tootles and Nibs, the youngest Lost Boys, the only two to avoid being captured. Tootles, mute from fear and trauma, wrote on a notepad, "You're here to save Peter?" "Yes," Wendy said, setting Tinkerbell down gently. Nibs added, "We've been hiding here ever since Hook captured everyone else. The pirates, witches, and the Red Queen's forces are everywhere." Dorothy frowned. "We can't take Glinda and Tinkerbell with us. They are too weak." Alice knelt beside the Lost Boys. "Can you keep them safe?" Tootles nodded, his pencil scratching. "We'll protect them." "And the White Rabbit," Wendy added as the exhausted rabbit crawled into the cave. The heroines left their companions behind, knowing they couldn't afford to slow down. By night, the three heroines traveled by a small rowboat across the dark, foreboding sea. "We need help," Wendy murmured, breaking the silence. She looked out over the dark water, her voice filled with quiet urgency. "There's no way we can take on the Rift Keeper and his army alone." Dorothy nodded grimly. "But who's left?" she asked. Her voice was tinged with despair, a hint of doubt creeping into her usually steadfast demeanor. "The Lost Boys are scattered. The people of us are too scared to fight. Wonderland is a twisted nightmare." Alice looked up from her dagger, her eyes sharp and determined. "We'll find someone," she said firmly. "We have to. We didn't come this far to give up now." As if on cue, the sea began to shift. The gentle waves turned choppier, and the once calm waters seemed to churn with unseen forces. Dorothy tightened her grip on the boat, struggling to keep the boat steady. "What's happening?" Wendy asked, her voice rising in alarm. "It's not natural," Alice said, standing and clutching her dagger tightly. "We're getting closer." As they neared the horizon, they saw the outline of a massive volcano marking the border of the three realms. Its fiery glow lit the skies above, a reminder of the destruction caused by the Rift Keeper and his Dark Alliance. The wind picked up, howling like a banshee as the waves grew larger, slamming against the sides of the boat. Out of the darkness, a shadow began to rise. A group of flying monkeys flew towards them as their cackling cry echoing through the night. "They found us," Dorothy said through gritted teeth, her heart pounding. "Brace yourselves." The monkeys swooped down, their claws raking across the water as it aimed for the boat. Wendy drew her sword and leapt to the bow, swinging her blade with newfound strength and precision. The creature recoiled, its talons narrowly missing the boat as Wendy's sword glowed faintly with the magic imbued within it. Dorothy, hanging onto the mast with one hand, used her other to summon her winds. Though her magic was not as strong as before, she managed to create a small cyclone that spun toward the monkeys, knocking them off course. "We can't keep this up," Wendy shouted, panting as she fought to fend off the monkeys. "We need a way out." Dorothy's mind raced. The boat's magic was nearly spent, and the enemies were relentless. Then, an idea struck her. "Alice," she called, "can you mimic my cyclone magic?" Alice nodded, though her expression was strained from the effort of the fight. She ran to Dorothy's side, placing a hand on her shoulder. A faint glow passed between them, as Alice absorbed Dorothy's ability. "Now!" Dorothy shouted. Together, they summoned a massive cyclone, its winds howling as it engulfed the monkeys. The creatures screeched in rage, their forms twisting and disappearing into the storm. As the storm subsided, the waters calmed once more. The boat rocked gently, the tension in the air slowly dissipating. The three heroines stood in silence, catching their breath. "That was too close," Wendy said, her voice trembling slightly. Dorothy nodded, her hands still gripping the oar. "But we made it." Alice leaned against the mast, her chest heaving. "Let's hope that's the worst of it." They continued their journey in silence, their thoughts heavy with the battles that's still to come. The trio pressed on, carrying Glinda and Tinkerbell with them until they stumbled upon a hidden cave. Inside, they found two figures, Tootles and Nibs, the youngest Lost Boys, the only two to avoid being captured. Tootles, mute from fear and trauma, wrote on a notepad, "You're here to save Peter?" "Yes," Wendy said, setting Tinkerbell down gently. Nibs added, "We've been hiding here ever since Hook captured everyone else. The pirates, witches, and the Red Queen's forces are everywhere." Dorothy frowned. "We can't take Glinda and Tinkerbell with us. They are too weak." Alice knelt beside the Lost Boys. "Can you keep them safe?" Tootles nodded, his pencil scratching. "We'll protect them." "And the White Rabbit," Wendy added as the exhausted rabbit crawled into the cave. The heroines left their companions behind, knowing they couldn't afford to slow down. By night, the three heroines traveled by a small rowboat across the dark, foreboding sea. "We need help," Wendy murmured, breaking the silence. She looked out over the dark water, her voice filled with quiet urgency. "There's no way we can take on the Rift Keeper and his army alone." Dorothy nodded grimly. "But who's left?" she asked. Her voice was tinged with despair, a hint of doubt creeping into her usually steadfast demeanor. "The Lost Boys are scattered. The people of us are too scared to fight. Wonderland is a twisted nightmare. Alice looked up from her dagger, her eyes sharp and determined. We'll find someone, she said firmly. We have to. We didn't come this far to give up now. As if on cue, the sea began to shift. The gentle waves turned choppier, and the once calm waters seemed to churn with unseen forces. Dorothy tightened her grip on the boat, struggling to keep the boat steady. What's happening? Wendy asked, her voice rising in alarm. It's not natural, Alice said, standing and clutching her dagger tightly. We're getting closer. As they neared the horizon, they saw the outline of a massive volcano marking the border of the three realms. Its fiery glow lit the skies above, a reminder of the destruction caused by the Rift Keeper and his Dark Alliance. The wind picked up, howling like a banshee as the waves grew larger, slamming against the sides of the boat. Out of the darkness, a shadow began to rise. A group of flying monkeys flew towards them as their cackling cry echoing through the night. They found us, Dorothy said through gritted teeth, her heart pounding. Brace yourselves. The monkeys swooped down, their claws raking across the water as it aimed for the boat. Wendy drew her sword and leapt to the bow, swinging her blade with newfound strength and precision. The creature recoiled, its talons narrowly missing the boat as Wendy's sword glowed faintly with the magic imbued within it. Dorothy, hanging onto the mast with one hand, used her other to summon her winds. Though her magic was not as strong as before, she managed to create a small cyclone that spun toward the monkeys, knocking them off course. We can't keep this up, Wendy shouted, panting as she fought to fend off the monkeys. We need a way out. Dorothy's mind raced. The boat's magic was nearly spent, and the enemies were relentless. Then, an idea struck her. Alice, she called. Can you mimic my cyclone magic? Alice nodded, though her expression was strained from the effort of the fight. She ran to Dorothy's side, placing a hand on her shoulder. A faint glow passed between them as Alice absorbed Dorothy's ability. Now! Dorothy shouted. Together, they summoned a massive cyclone, its winds howling as it engulfed the monkeys. The creatures screeched in rage, their forms twisting and disappearing into the storm. As the storm subsided, the waters calmed once more. The boat rocked gently, the tension in the air slowly dissipating. The three heroines stood in silence, catching their breath. That was too close, Wendy said, her voice trembling slightly. Dorothy nodded, her hands still gripping the oar. But we made it. Alice leaned against the mast, her chest heaving. Let's hope that's the worst of it. They continued their journey in silence, their thoughts heavy with the battles that's still to come. Dorothy and the brave lion crouched in the shadows outside the Wicked Witch's fortress. The towering obsidian castle pulsed with dark magic, its turrets twisting unnaturally as if alive. Winged monkeys circled the skies, and enchanted guards, hulking, twisted creatures made of molten rock and iron, patrolled the perimeter. Are you ready for this? Dorothy whispered, clutching her silver staff. The lion flexed his claws, his once timid eyes now blazing with courage. I've waited too long to fight back. Dorothy summoned a faint breeze to mask their scent as they crept through a crack in the fortress wall. Inside, the air was thick with the acrid smell of burning magic. They moved through the labyrinthine halls, avoiding patrols until they reached the dungeons. Through the bars of a cell, they saw Princess Ozma. Her radiant presence was dimmed, her magic being siphoned by glowing chains that bound her wrists. Dorothy, Ozma whispered weakly, her eyes lighting up with hope. Before Dorothy could respond, a deafening screech echoed through the halls. The Wicked Witch of the West appeared, her green face twisted in a wicked grin. You didn't think you'd sneak in unnoticed, did you? She cackled, raising her staff. The lion roared and lunged at the witch. Dorothy used her staff to summon a gust of wind, knocking the guards off their feet. The witch retaliated with a bolt of dark energy, narrowly missing Dorothy. Dorothy struck the ground with her staff, creating a cyclone that swirled around the witch, disorienting her long enough for the lion to break the chains holding Ozma. I can't walk, Ozma said weakly. Dorothy nodded. Hold on. She slung Ozma over her shoulder and ran as the lion held off the witch. Go. The lion roared, slashing at the guards who poured into the room. Dorothy hesitated but knew there was no time. She fled with Ozma, tears streaming down her face as the lion's roar echoed behind her. Alice strode into the throne room of the Red Queen's twisted palace, her crystalline dagger in hand. The room was a grotesque version of Wonderland's beauty, with jagged black and red tiles forming a massive chessboard. The Red Queen sat on her throne, her Jabberwock perched beside her. "You dare to challenge me?" the Red Queen sneered. "I'm not here to play your games," Alice replied. "Oh, but you are," the Queen said, snapping her fingers. The chessboard came to life, the pieces transforming into armored knights and towering rooks. Alice darted across the board, her dagger slicing through the enchanted pieces as they attacked. She touched one of the rooks, absorbing its strength and using it to smash through the Queen's defenses. The Red Queen hissed and summoned the Jabberwock. The beast lunged at Alice, but she rolled beneath it and climbed onto its back, plunging her dagger into its scales. The creature roared and flung her off, but she landed gracefully. "You're clever, Alice," the Queen said, retreating toward her throne. "But not clever enough." Alice smirked. "That's where you're wrong." She touched the throne itself, absorbing its magic and redirecting it into a blast of energy that struck the Queen. The Queen screamed as her power was temporarily weakened, allowing Alice to free the King and Queen of Hearts from their chains. "Go!" Alice shouted, standing guard as they fled. Wendy soared through the skies, clutching her glowing rapier as Tinkerbell's pixie dust gave her the ability to fly. The Jolly Roger loomed ahead, its dark sails glowing with eerie green runes. Hook stood at the helm, his hook gleaming in the moonlight. "Wendy, darling," he said with a sneer, "come to join your friend in chains." Wendy didn't reply. She dove toward the deck, her rapier clashing with Hook's blade. Their duel was fierce, Hook's strength fueled by dark magic. "You've grown up, Wendy," Hook said, parrying her strike. "But you're no match for me." "I've grown up," Wendy said, slashing at his hook. "But I haven't forgotten how to fight." The duel raged across the deck, Wendy using her agility to evade Hook's strikes. She spotted Peter Pan in a cage hanging from the mast. "Tinkerbell," she called, "free Peter." The fairy, weak but determined, zipped toward the cage and sprinkled it with pixie dust. The lock melted away, and Peter stumbled out, his strength slowly returning. "Wendy," he shouted, grabbing his sword from the deck. Together, they overwhelmed Hook, forcing him to retreat below deck. "Let's go," Wendy said, pulling Peter toward the edge of the ship. With a leap, they flew off the Jolly Roger. The heroines reunited at the heart of the rift, their armies of rebels behind them. Dorothy, Alice, and Wendy led the charge against the villains' alliance, each using their powers and weapons to fight back. The battle was fierce, with Hook commanding his pirates, the witches unleashing storms of dark magic, and the Red Queen summoning her monstrous creatures. Just as the villains began to overpower them, a blast of magic lit up the battlefield. Glinda, Tinkerbell, Tootles, Nibs, and the White Rabbit had joined the fight, their combined magic turning the tide. The battlefield within the rift was a chaotic swirl of clashing armies, monstrous creatures, and crackling magic. Dorothy, Alice, and Wendy led their forces against the villains, but the enemy's strength was overwhelming. In the midst of the chaos, Peter Pan found himself face to face with Captain Hook aboard a crumbling platform made of rift stone, suspended high above the fray. "Ah, Pan," Hook sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "You've grown soft in your imprisonment. Let's see if you still remember how to fight." Peter raised his sword, his eyes blazing with defiance. "I remember enough to put an end to you, Hook." The duel began with a clash of steel that sent echoes through the battlefield. Hook's attacks were calculated and relentless, his strength bolstered by the dark magic of the rift. Peter's movements were nimble and quick, but his time in captivity had weakened him. Blow by blow, Hook drove Peter back, their battle teetering dangerously close to the edge of the platform. "You're not the boy who bested me all those years ago," Hook taunted, slashing Peter's arm and sending his sword clattering to the ground. "This time, I'll finish what I started," said Hook. Peter fell to his knees, panting and defenseless as Hook raised his blade for the killing blow. But before the strike could land, a resounding clang of steel rang out. Hook's blade was intercepted by another sword, Wendy's. Hook recoiled in surprise, his sneer turning to a snarl. "Wendy, darling," he hissed. "Still playing a hero, I see." Wendy stood between Hook and Peter, her glowing rapier steady in her hands. "You'll have to get through me first," she said, her voice steely and resolute. The duel began, and it was unlike anything Hook had faced before. Wendy's newfound powers, a gift from Tinkerbell's magic and Glinda's blessing, made her faster, stronger, and more precise. Her movements were fluid, her strikes calculated, and her agility unmatched. Hook lunged with a ferocious overhead slash, but Wendy sidestepped and countered with a graceful spin, her blade slicing across his arm. He snarled and pressed the attack, but she parried his blows with ease, her rapier glowing brighter with every clash. "You've gotten stronger," Hook admitted through gritted teeth, his attacks becoming more desperate. "But strength alone won't save you." Wendy smiled, her confidence unwavering. "It's not just strength. It's heart." She drove Hook back with a series of precise strikes, each one forcing him closer to the edge of the platform. His footing faltered, and for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Desperate, Hook unleashed a wild swing aimed at Wendy's head, but she ducked and delivered a powerful upward slash that disarmed him. His sword flew from his hand, clattering far below into the rift's chasm. Hook stumbled back, clutching his wounded arm, his once unshakable arrogance replaced with panic. Wendy advanced, her rapier leveled at his chest. "This is for Peter," she said, her voice low and dangerous. But before she could strike, the platform beneath them shuddered violently as the rift began to collapse. Hook seized the moment of distraction to leap from the platform onto the rigging of the Jolly Roger which hovered nearby. "Run while you can, Wendy, darling," he called mockingly. "This isn't over." Wendy watched him retreat, her grip tightening on her sword. She turned back to Peter, who was struggling to his feet. "Are you okay?" she asked, offering him a hand. Peter nodded, taking her hand and standing. "I am now, thank you, Wendy." The two of them leapt from the platform and glided down to rejoin Dorothy and Alice and the others below. The rift's sky swirled with storm clouds with flashes of crimson lightning illuminating the battlefield. Dorothy and the lion stood back to back. Around them, a horde of flying monkeys descended as their screeches echoing through the air like a terrifying symphony. "Stay close to me, Dorothy," the lion growled, his deep voice resonating with courage. His massive frame bristled as he flexed his claws as his sharp teeth bared. "These beasts won't go down easy." Dorothy gripped her staff tightly, the emerald embedded at its head pulsing with magic. Her eyes scanned the skies as the monkeys swooped closer. "We've got this, lion. Let's show them what happens when they mess with us." The first wave of monkeys flew toward them, claws extended and teeth bared. The lion roared and leapt into the air with surprising agility for his size, swiping one monkey out of the sky with a powerful blow. Dorothy swung her staff, sending a bolt of green energy that struck another monkey, knocking it out of the air. More came, their sheer numbers overwhelming. The lion grappled with three at once, his claws tearing through their leathery wings. He slammed one into the ground with a mighty paw, while another clung to his back, clawing at his fur. Dorothy spun around and blasted the monkey off him with her staff, the force of the spell sending it flying into a wall. "Thanks, kid," the lion said, his voice strained but determined. Dorothy nodded, twirling her staff and summoning a gust of wind that sent a group of monkeys spiraling out of control. "We've got to keep moving," she shouted over the din. "If we stay here, they'll overwhelm us." The lion growled in agreement, charging forward and barreling through the swarm, clearing a path for Dorothy. She followed closely, using her staff to create protective barriers of swirling air that deflected the monkeys' attacks. One particularly large monkey, its fur streaked with red and its eyes glowing with dark magic, landed in front of them. It let out an ear-splitting screech and charged at Dorothy. Before she could react, the lion tackled it, with the two of them rolling across the ground in a flurry of claws and teeth. "Go!" the lion roared, pinning the monstrous monkey beneath him. "I'll handle this one." Dorothy hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding, but she trusted the lion's strength. She turned and faced the remaining swarm, raising her staff high. The emerald at its head glowed brighter, and she slammed it into the ground. "Enough!" Dorothy cried, her voice ringing with authority. A shockwave of green energy burst from the staff, creating a dome of wind that swept the flying monkeys away. They screeched in panic as they were hurled into the air, their wings flailing uselessly against the magical storm. The lion finished off the red-streaked monkey with a powerful swipe of his claws, then stood and shook his mane, panting but victorious. He looked around at the scattered remains of the swarm and grinned. "Not bad, Dorothy, not bad at all." Dorothy lowered her staff, breathing heavily but steady. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" The lion nodded, his fierce expression softening into a proud smile. We do, but we're not done yet. Dorothy tightened her grip on her staff, determination shining in her eyes. Then let's finish this. With the skies temporarily clear, the two of them pressed on, their resolve stronger than ever. They knew the battle was far from over, but together, they were unstoppable. At the center of the fray, Alice, Tweedledee, and Tweedledum found themselves weapons in hand standing against three of the most fearsome creatures from Wonderland. The Jabberwock, the Bandersnatch, and the Jubjub bird. The ground trembled beneath the creatures' combined weight as they circled the trio, their glowing eyes filled with malicious intent. This is going to be tricky, Alice muttered, gripping her vorpal sword tightly. Its blade shimmered with an otherworldly light, a reminder of its legendary ability to slay monsters. Tricky, yes. Impossible. No, Tweedledee said confidently. He and Tweedledum stood shoulder to shoulder, their hands raised, a faint golden glow surrounding them as they activated their telepathic twin powers. Impossible. Never. Tweedledum added, finishing his brother's thought. The Jabberwock let out an ear-piercing roar, its serpentine body twisting as it lunged at them. Alice sidestepped the attack with a graceful spin, slashing her sword across its flank. The beast howled in pain, its fiery breath scorching the ground where Alice had just stood. Focus on the big one, Alice shouted to the twins. Tweedledee and Tweedledum exchanged a glance, their minds perfectly synchronized. They raised their hands in unison, and a surge of psychic energy shot toward the Jabberwock, forming chains of glowing light that wrapped around its wings. The Jabberwock thrashed violently, trying to break free, but the twins' combined powers held firm. While the twins kept the Jabberwock contained, the Bandersnatch charged toward them, its claws tearing into the earth with every step. Alice darted forward to intercept it, her sword gleaming as she struck at the creature's legs. The Bandersnatch roared and swiped at her, but Alice's agility allowed her to dance around its attacks, landing precise blows that weakened the beast. Above them, the Jubjub bird circled, its talons glowing with dark magic. It let out a bone-chilling screech and dove toward Tweedledee. At the last second, Tweedledum pulled his brother aside, and the bird's talons raked harmlessly against the ground. We've got this one, Tweedledee called, raising his hands. Tweedledum mirrored him, and together they created a psychic shield that repelled the Jubjub bird's next attack. The bird screeched in frustration, but the twins held their ground, their bond giving them strength. Alice, meanwhile, had managed to force the Bandersnatch onto its back. She climbed onto its chest, raising the vorpal sword high. Sorry, beastie. But before she could plunge her sword into the fallen beast, the ground below them fell apart with Alice just managing to jump free as the Bandersnatch fell into the deep canyon below. The Bandersnatch let out a roar as it fell into the dark blackness. Bandersnatch down, Alice shouted, turning her attention to the Jubjub bird. The twins unleashed a psychic blast that stunned the bird mid-flight, sending it crashing to the ground. Alice seized the opportunity, rushing toward it and delivering a precise strike to its belly. The Jubjub bird let out a pitiful squawk before collapsing to floor. That just leaves the big one, Tweedledee said, sweat beading on his forehead as he and his brother struggled to keep the Jabberwock restrained. The Jabberwock roared again, its fiery breath melting the psychic chains that bound it. It lunged at the twins, its claws poised to strike. No, you don't, Alice yelled, leaping onto the creature's head. As the monster thrashed around as Alice clubbed at its head, the beast flew straight into a rock wall, with both it and Alice falling into the deep canyon below. Hold on, Alice shouted the twins, the brothers using their psychic telekinetic powers to catch Alice as she fell, placing her safely on a ridge safe from the falling rocks. Alice leapt clear of the crumbling remains, landing gracefully next to the twins. Well done, she said, offering them a grin. We aim to please, Tweedledee said with a smile. And we never miss, Tweedledum added. The three of them looked around the battlefield, their breaths heavy but their resolve unbroken. With the beasts down, they rejoined the others, ready to bring the fight to the heart of the rift, and end the villain's reign once and for all. The rift began to collapse as the heroines drove the villains back, and the magic to keep the rift open was being used to defend themselves against the rebellion force. Peter ordered the rebels to retreat, but the escape route was blocked. The heroines regrouped, their combined leadership turning the tide of the battle. Dorothy used her staff to summon cyclones that swept away waves of flying monkeys and enchanted gods. Alice mimicked the abilities of her foes, using their own powers against them with deadly precision. Wendy's swordplay and aerial agility made her a blur of motion, cutting through the enemy ranks with ease. The opening was now clear, and the retreat began, but the opening to the rift was closing too quickly. Smee, seeing no other option, stole Tinkerbell's pixie dust and used all its magic to keep the rift open to allow them to escape. "Go!" he shouted, shoving Tootles and Nibs through the portal just as it was closing. A cannonball from the Jolly Roger Fire-by-Hook himself struck Smee as he pushed the last two Lost Boys through. He fell backwards through the opening with the portal closing behind him. Peter rushed to his side, joined by tearful Tootles and Nibs. Smee, with his last breath, said, Did the boys make it?" "Yes, Smee. The boys are safe," replied Peter, with a smile on his face. Smee closed his eyes and took his last breath. His sacrifice had atoned for all his past actions and a whole lot more. The three realms began to heal, their rightful rulers restored. At sea, Peter Pan led a solemn ceremony aboard an armada of ships, giving Smee a true burial at sea. "Fair winds, Smee," Peter said, his voice heavy with grief. "You were a hero in the end." The ship's cannons fired in salute as the sun set on the horizon, the realms finally at peace. But deep in the shadows of the rift, the villains waited. The Rift Keeper's laughter echoed faintly, a reminder that evil never truly sleeps.